She's a hell of a videographer, or whatever you call it.
Right.
She makes some really good ones. She does it for her business,
Uh,
so she's real big on like reels and
hmm.
boom. There we go. Yeah, it's kind of weird getting together without any music.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's like, what are we going to do without music?
I know.
Mm. Mm.
So, yeah, let's see. Oh, we got 6 people in the house. They're coming. Yeah, man.
Okay. Well,
Everyone I've run into, everyone I've talked to, which is not a lot because I don't really talk to anybody. But I mean, just picking up things, and it's like the reality. I don't know. I would describe it like this. I thought it was just in my world, but I think it was everybody. Which was the
mm,
summer was hot as fuck. It
mm,
just burned, and then we kind of came out of it September, and it was like September, October, and most of November was just like the Twilight Zone, like that screen behind you, like
mm.
integration, assimilation, what the fuck elation, what happened, and then it kind of chilled 22 November or thereabouts, and like I don't know, man. Since Christmas, every day just seems like Christmas. At the
Mm.
same time, the world goes on, and the contrast of, let's say, the two Earths in every person you meet and every place you go is very obvious. I don't know. That's how I see
Yeah, it's kind of
it.
like we can't live from the illusion anymore, and the illusion is so thin. You know.
Yeah, and I think abundance is tied into it as well.
Mm, mm.
The new abundance, or something like that.
Right, 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 right. This year we get to experience Pluto in Aquarius, which is going to be a generational shift and also a shift in the subconscious programming.
All right.
So, subconscious is our fears. So, since 2008, we've been in this fear that we didn't really have enough. We've been in this fear that we had to push the structure beyond its capacity.
Right.
And as it comes into Aquarius, I think the individual and the individual needs become so much more important, and individuality becomes really important in this new cycle.
Well, that sounds like fun. I mean, that's.
Right.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's going to be the first year that maybe we have a chance to live from a knowing system matrix instead of depending on beliefs to carry us, really.
Yeah.
Mm.
Which is what a lot of people have been doing. You know. I mean, it only makes sense to them from their eyes. You know. I mean, everybody's got their own perspective, but I think a significant number of people have done some shadow work or deep diving or uh, relying on that knowing, because I guess that knowing is intuition and telepathy.
Absolutely, like the heart itself, the place of knowing. Um, I had something interesting happen this last week. In the emotional work, I see people collapse their charge all the time. And I often ask them after they collapse the charge if um, where their mind is. And many of them point to their heart. And I tell them that, that's your heart, that's not your mind. But what I've discovered is that when the story collapses, the voice of the heart really becomes available. Your inner knowing becomes available.
And so, like, uh, collapsing the charge means like zero pointing, like coming into equilibrium.
Yeah, to literally go through those charges of having to protect and defend ourselves, or the charge of depleting the self.
Hmm.
What I would call positive and negative charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To
Positive.
get into the pulsing.
Hmm.
That's where the health is, really. It's in our pulse. It's like if we don't breathe, we don't really stick around, do we?
And so I know we talked about this before. A lot of people are talking about it. Some of the dates are a little bit different, but I'd say anywhere from mid-March to into April. I even saw somebody go into May with it, but most people, it seems to be March, April, end of some retrograde, into February or something like that, where there's going to be another almost like paradigm shift kind of thing. But in between now and then, we still have that space. What's actually happening now? I know you mentioned reorganization quite a bit when we talked into last year. What's going on between now and then?
Well, right now we are definitely in the Mars retrograde period, and this Mars retrograde is the internalization of our dialogue. So the story is kind of the biggest problem for people right now. And do I live from the old story, or do I make myself available in a fear that it's not going to be good enough, or does the mind stop me from organizing my highest excitement? So we're in the internalization phase, and that's going to come to close in about 6 days on the 12th of January. And the externalization of really living our highest excitement. Are we having any fun? Are we ready to communicate the things that we haven't been expressing? So, in Gemini, communication is big. The body is big too. And a lot of people are going through body things. And of course, relationships are going through a fascinating transformation because of the influence of the dialogue on how we relate. And do we look for our partnerships to make us happy, or do we have our own foundation of happiness?
So the element of the influence of the dialogue becomes lesser, let's just say that, or not existent.
Well, we're really clearing the obstacles of the dialogue. So whatever's come up for each and every one of us about 6 weeks before Halloween and to the present date, whatever it came up, whatever your mind was trying to tell you of how you should organize, or how this should be, or whatever the hell it is, all that's going to be revisited as we reorganize really the suffering of life into the clarity of life. And I love to put suffering and clarity together, because the only place I've ever found that put together is in the Toltec traditions, and the warriors are taught that through suffering we gain clarity.
But now we're at a place where we can consciously choose not to suffer.
Right. And that means we get to embody.
Yeah.
And, I think other than embodiment is suffering.
True. Well, because it's impeding the growth of the soul, which is what we're here for. Growth.
It's always got to come back to the soul, doesn't it?
Well, I'm partial.
So I just wrote a new song about that. That it always comes back to the soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, you haven't heard it yet.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
I have the audio, but it's in pieces because I'm making a video. So
oh, cool.
It will be out in the video. Yeah.
Cool. And I've heard other people talk about it before too, that not just people you can apply esoteric astrology not just to people, but to countries, cities, etc. I remember you were telling me one time about, and I've heard other people talk about it, but maybe let's revisit it. What is the esoteric astrology saying about the United States, or even the world?
Well, America is so tied to the world, isn't it? And the petrodollar, of course, is very tied to the world's economies. So America is experiencing its Pluto return, which is the death and rebirth of a nation. It is corruption followed by a renaissance on all levels. And America's Mars happens to be in Gemini. And we are multitaskers, aren't we, in this country? Don't we piece it together and kind of figure it out and create inventive ways to to organize things.
Hmm.
And so this Mars retrograde is really showing that the mentality of America and how Americans have been really looking at the world gets to be transformed.
Cool.
I don't know what that means really for America, but it's kind of like I think America's ready to be done with the bullshit.
Maybe people everywhere.
Right. Absolutely. And the Mars retrograde about the body and all the issues that have been coming up about our bodies and our sovereignty and those decisions that we make around our health and stuff like that. I think we're seeing some of that in the news of all the people possibly having effects in their athletes and stuff like that is very fascinating and indicative of this retrograde also. So issues from the past resurfacing in past decisions can be really, really prevalent right now. And it's kind of like Mars in Gemini wants you to use your mind to organize things and not ask the question, how did I get to this crossroads?
Right.
And
right.
how we got to that crossroads is through choices.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's a circumstance or a consequence. Yeah, I get that. That's like that feels, that resonates. I think there has been a shift slowly occurring from, that's why I've said, and it's not really accurate, it can be on the offense and forget the shadow work, and I've probably sounded like that before, but that's not what I really mean, because things keep coming up. But there is something to be said for, where am I at, where am I going? That's a level of letting go of any and all stories behind you from that point forward. Now, it's one thing to say that and think you might know it, which I'm talking to myself, but it's another thing to actually put it into place. And I think, to me, the atmosphere, if you will, has become more of an obvious collaborator than before. And kind of magical things happen. They're becoming more frequent. You can see the thread, and yet at the same time, if you go back into the story, all the distortion's still there. It's even worse. I mean, all you gotta do is put on mainstream media. It's comical. It's laughable.
Right. One thing interesting about this Mars retrograde is that Saturn is in harmony with it, which means there is harmony for clearing obstacles in the dialogue around restructuring our individuality.
Say that again.
So when we change the dialogue, we literally get to restructure our individuality. And we've been experiencing a restriction or empowerment of individuality over the last 2.5 years with Saturn's movement through Aquarius. And this movement is in harmony with this Mars retrograde for really figuring out the thoughts and patterns that lead to us feeling other than free.
All right.
And also
suffering. Suffering.
And not to mention also fascism. Community is the only energy that steps up against fascism.
That's interesting.
As far as I can see, and notice we're seeing fascism arise in the world. It's not the first time. No. It's not the first time we thought that being fascist and taking away everybody's rights was super functional. But I think that we must go through this idea of fascism to actually build functional communities. And I think that comes around to the whole container conversation that you and I have had multiple times.
Do you think that... I had a better one. So in the... let's just say... God, went back to what you were talking about earlier. The present energy, our consciousness as energetic beings, and our abilities that we're coming into, and the way we're kind of flowing with it, and I don't know how to exactly put it, but we have all these things in our conscious awareness, let's say the five senses, and then all this other stuff's coming online. And we often think about all the things that we can see with the sense with the five senses as the things that we're dealing with. But we know that there's more than that. We know there's non-physical stuff. We can talk about Pleiadians. We can talk about Anunnaki. We can talk about all kinds of stuff. How does that affect, or can these things affect, and to what degree, if so, our energy field? Any one of us or a group of us or anything like that? Is there less interference and intrusion just by virtue of the expansion of the consciousness? Or is there still some fuckery that can, penetrate you?
So it's a hell of a question. And when you were talking, the spirits were showing me the soul directive. On this planet, for a really, really long time, it didn't matter what your soul's vote was for what your soul wanted to experience.
Right.
And that's what's changed. And as we become a Christed planet, and all I mean is a vertical axis of our magnetic field, moving away from the wobble, moving away from seasons, and also moving into a time where our collective soul direction, everybody gets a vote. And that vote doesn't have to go to the polls. That vote happens inside of us. And on a Christed planet, the soul directive rules. And if we agree on it on a soul level, then it can manifest. And there are some other energies, and we'll call them charge, that people are still entertaining in the reality of validation of seeking things outside of themselves and creating, of course, self-importance. And they are experiencing attraction of the same energy, and also the diminishing of that energy's power in this reality. I'm not sure I answered your question, Todd.
No, you did. That ties in with Franco de Nicola, totally. And I'm sure other people's a description of the narrative as they've experienced it, and yours is spot on. Like in comparison, as a parallel, is really the same thing, just a different explanation. Let me just the one part I wasn't totally clear on what you said at the beginning before I go. You're saying that for a period of time, the collective soul did not rule the manifestation, right?
Yeah, it had no influence.
Right. Okay. So, like in his terms, it would be like the distorted. What is it called? The inorganic 3D projection, or whatever. The distortion of the polarity to an extreme duality was turned off at some point in time on or about the COVID wave. What that means is that no longer would it be projected, and the only place it would be running would be in our egos, which is what you're saying in terms of and that basically it would slowly fall away.
Hopefully, right?
If that's what we collectively decide, I guess is what it really comes down to.
Right. When planets are not Christed, they don't have a vertical axis and they don't have an even output. They aren't pulsing. They are charging realities. And for example, energy is fractal or infinite in the universe when it pulses, and it folds in on itself and makes its own gravity. Now, is this the destiny of every human on this planet? I really hope so. And the gravity I'm talking about making is the gravity of their own self-awareness, the gravity of their feelings, the gravity of the development, the gravity of going through things. And I was reading this long quote by Einstein earlier today, and in this quote, I should go back and find it because he basically says everything. He says that physics shows us exactly how reality works. Physics shows us that what we create inside of us is what we literally attract in our reality. And he didn't say anything about thoughts. He didn't say anything about projection, control, manipulation. Um, and the quote, it was really long. It was this whole paragraph or so, and maybe I'll post it later if I can find it. But he really showed us that this is what we're missing. We're missing our understanding of our vibrational world. And that if we understood our vibrational world, we'd know how to literally create and interact with each other in a more recursive or fractal or infinite way.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think building community is that. And I know you and I have been talking about that. If we have a container, we have something to share from.
Yeah.
And if other people have a container, they have something to share from.
Yeah.
And then we have community.
Yeah.
Without sacrificing uniqueness.
Yeah, just a serious extrapolation of the word presence or the vibrational, energetic description of what we might call presence. Like how can we share our container if we don't know what it is? Right?
I think we have to ask ourselves, what are we here to receive?
Mm-hmm.
Because the container must be filled up to share.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the thing that is so difficult to hold on to is, what do I truly want to receive in this situation? What am I open to receiving right now? And why the hell am I not receiving in the first place?
And is there a tie-in to creating? Is it tied into receiving?
Well, notice that if you're going to sing a song, you take the breath first before that melody comes forward. And you cannot take the breath away from the melody, can you?
What the hell? Snatch the pebble from my hand.
Grasshopper.
So,
but,
yeah. Go ahead.
Well, it's shareable, and shareable pulses. And I think our breath is the thing that we must always come back to. Because notice our dialogue and the mind has no idea of the simplicity of what receiving equals, because it's not a tangible reality. Vibrations are not tangible. Our feelings are not tangible, but those are the things that we want the most in life. But we seek to get them through the material world, which really kind of blows my mind. That we are under this spell that those things are going to fulfill us and equate to these feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So it does keep me in business, because people have emotional problems. And so do I, of course. But going through it is not something that we're really adept at yet. That isn't the "let's go through this" motto. Not a lot of people have that.
Let's go create some new code. Let's go to Earth and play and create some new code.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this time, 2023, for many, many years, because Pluto in Capricorn did not seem. It felt oppressive, even when Pluto in Capricorn.
When did that occur?
2008 until 2023 February or so. That's the whole period. And notice the markets crash also, and our financial reality in 2008 was such a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I really never felt like I recovered in the business sense from what was happening in 2008 after that collapse, because that collapse in America's chart showed an expansion in America's financial house. But did we expand at that time? Or did the bubble happen and we literally had to deal with the manipulation of things, and getting the rest of the public to pay for that manipulation has kind of been
some
where
bullshit.
we've been at ever since,
So, yeah, man, it's good stuff. So, what are you So what do you? Okay, so this thing ends in February 2023.
It ends and starts this new cycle. So we're coming into the cusp of Aquarius. So it's in between Capricorn and Aquarius. And the energy that falls in between structure and revolution is what we call the rainbow bridge, Chiron, the wounded healer.
Hmm.
And so this year, the wounded healers that have known that they are here to step into something and embody something,
Mm-hmm.
this is their wake up call this year.
Wow, that's
Because
a
it's not. Yeah.
no, that's a powerful thing to contemplate. You all these years you hear about wounded healer, and it kind of has a bad connotation, but it's not. It's actually, I mean, if you think about it, in whatever narrative or as the story goes, those that came here with the ability to bring into alignment or heal certainly have been, earned their stripes. So it's almost like a badge of honor. Wounded healer, here's the call. Apply it to, well, I think embodiment is the key word there, is what you said, right? Embodiment is the true alignment with the human being, and that healer, so many healers out there are doing that.
Chiron represents the multidimensional on a very deep level. And as we face death and learn that there is no such thing as death, there is only transformation, then our perception of the multidimensional expands. And this sensitive part between Cap and Aquarius, the rainbow bridge, Chiron representing us using our whole brain, not half of it. And most people, if they're using their left brain, they try to fix everything. And if they're using their right brain, then they wonder why shit keeps happening to them. But when we become whole brained, this is when Chiron's magic kind of comes forward. And this year we will have an expansion of the warrior energy, because Chiron is in the sign of the warrior and Jupiter is expanding the warrior. So I'm going to call this year the end of the guru and the embodiment of care. And everybody has the ability to embody the care. Nobody needs a guru. And if you have one, it is just a go-between between you and the self that you don't need. And so everybody becomes their own warriors this year. And if they're ready to face things, then they can transform and transmute their reality, because avoiding things is a shit show. And, nobody's really, I wish they would write books about avoiding things, because that's what most people do. But as we learn to go through it, we learn that there is something for us to be educated in here. And many people decided they were done learning, and the universe then throws the whole lesson at them at one time and says, here, deal with this shit on your own time then. It doesn't take it.
See you later.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm out. It's
when the shit hits the fan and you look up and go, man, what happened? Like, I told you. And that's when your awakening starts.
Absolutely.
Or restarts. Right. Like
Chiron
every day.
and Aries always ask themselves, why am I here? And there's a generation that was born in the 70s that are coming into their Chironic return, that means their gifts are surfacing. And we're also coming closer to the actual 49 to 51 year cycle that we've lived on this planet since 1977.
Which is what?
Is when Chiron was discovered. And we were ready to hold in our consciousness the multidimensional. It hasn't been too many years yet.
That happened in 1977?
1977. And a lot of astrologers look at when we discover a planet is when we're ready to hold the consciousness. Like in the 30s, Pluto was discovered, the atomic bomb. Okay?
Total darkness.
The Industrial Revolution was at 1871, the discovery of Uranus.
Which is what quality?
Uranus is electricity.
Okay.
Hmm. Neptune, the discoverer of photography, 1901 is when Neptune was discovered. In 1977 is when we opened up the multidimensionally, opened it back up to our spiritual development. And it happened right after Chiron moved into Taurus from Aries. And the kids that are born in 1977, I always know them because they look like they have the deer caught in the headlights look. And they're
Oh.
just kind of like, they have this certain face that happens, and they're here to take what we pioneer and put it into a workable, functional value system. So, and they're all coming of age in the Chironic energy.
Do
They're all
you
getting activated.
do you feel like that what we're all part of is like an exceptional cyclical ending and beginning, or this is the way it is everywhere, or this is actually new code being created, new creations, whatever, at many levels? I mean, is this an extra special time, or is there such thing? I don't even.
Well, notice that in 2012, we called it a special time. And in 2012, what all that really represented was now we're completely in the photon belt. And historically, when this planet hits the photon belt on either side of us, which is Leo or Aquarius, shit changes historically. Um, and the planet changes. In fact, the last time that it hit the opposite point here, we had a huge cataclysm. The axis of the Earth moved from vertical and settled at 23.5 degrees and created seasons. And we lost our memory of our ancestors because there's this glitch in the memory from that polar axis shifting. So we don't really remember our hunter-gatherer self. We don't remember that because we did not come and born into the magnetics of their reality, which was vertical. We were born into the magnetics of the wobble of the planet. And we're here to experience going from misalignment with self to the realignment with self on so many levels.
Let go or be dragged.
Right, right. You know, one thing we
In a
know
multiplicity.
is that the planet's frequency has been increasing. And we know for a fact that it was stable at 7.83 hertz for a really long time, but that is changing and has been changing. And she's up to 11, 12, even 13 sometimes, and 14. So her frequency is increasing. And it doesn't take a rocket science to understand that if you live on a frequency that is increasing, you're going to have to increase also.
Or be gone. I guess another way to ask the question would be, because I kind of look at it like this. Okay, the universe, the universes, the multiverses are our playgrounds, where we choose to go as souls, with forethought, free will, and that, like, it's like a big amusement park. Some could be really scary, some could be, whatever. And Earth is like the best show, with the biggest payload potentially. I see it that
Oh, yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, look at all of the wars on this planet. This planet has been through a nuclear holocaust.
More than
We can,
once.
yeah, more than once. We can tell by satellite images that in the ancient past, this place was decimated,
Well,
just like our
they wrote
movies.
about it in the Vedas,
Right, right.
and I'm sure other texts.
hmm
Um,
I think
Go
we
ahead.
don't realize how old we are here. I
Oh,
think that we have a very skewed idea of humanity's past.
there's been hundreds and hundreds of civilizations,
Right.
thousands even. Who knows? But now, in terms of like what you were talking about a second ago about the Hertz and all that, and other things, certainly, not to get salacious or go into National Enquirer type of conspiratorial stuff, but certainly the governments or the powerless powers that used to be would have an idea of this stuff, and like what would they be doing? Because everything points to it's fruitless. This is becoming a comical shit show. On one hand, it's extremely funny. On the other hand, it's unbearable. What are they doing? Do you think? And what are they hoping to get out of it?
Well, since 2019, our Saturn and Pluto conjunction literally brought forward the collapse of those power struggle structures.
Hmm.
And so, how functional was it for them to create a problem and the solution?
Hmm.
Okay, and if they create a problem and the solution, now they profit on both.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably in capitalistic world that's good business, right? Now we have a problem that we only have the solution to, and
Well,
I think
that's been the modus operandi for as long as I can remember.
yeah, that I think
6,000
that's
years.
the story of our institutions themselves, and I think that greed is the thing that is collapsed, and the people I think are less likely to think greed is good, and that it's functional.
Do you think it's collapsed or it's collapsing? Or energetically
Well,
it's
right.
collapsed?
Well, the energy that greed rules this world has collapsed.
Okay, I got you. So
But
it's
there's
inevitable.
plenty of
Okay.
greedy people still
Yeah.
engaged in
Well,
it like it's,
and again, just another physical representation of what we talked about. You and Franco's intel. Just another physical representation of the ego, the ego programming, continuing without any type of external projection.
yeah, my biggest tie into that this year is watching the science come forward that sound waves displace matter. And for that to going over people's heads in ways and them not understanding that should change how we live. It should change how we look at medicine. It should change how we look at our whole reality. Because, for a long time they told us that it didn't.
Right.
Okay. And it was a lie. And it was a basic lie in physics that they got away with, you know, that really blew my mind. Because I can prove that sound waves displace matter by watching all those videos of the guys with the big car speakers rolling their window like a wave. There's lots of those. I don't know if you've ever got into it.
No, I've never seen that.
Yeah, yeah. If you get on and put low speakers rolling my window like a wave, you literally see the waveform come through the window.
Wow.
And you're seeing the sound displace matter. And I've often wondered, there was a doctor, Dr. Richard Gerber, that wrote a book called Vibrational Medicine. And anybody in this industry, I don't even want to call it an industry, this type of study knows about this book, because he really outlines how vibration should really take over medicine. But there's no way for it to profit in that way, or a way they can figure out. So I understand why it hasn't. And I think that people's uses of vibrational technology has grown in the last 10 years than more than anything. Like, people know what scalar waves are, they know what Rife machines are. So there is a lot more education, but I still think there's a long way to go.
Mm. Well, it just seems like the only real effective change is going to come from the individual. Like, if you use the example of sound healing, or even alternative healing, it's a ridiculous word, right?
Mm.
Old school healing.
Right.
It's going to primarily be done by the person. It's like everyone, going back to the whole container thing that you and Morgan talk about, going back to the container. I mean, maybe we got to do every single thing ourselves to know it. I was watching a video of Elon Musk. He's an interesting character, It's like watching the yin and yang in one person, which I guess is all of us. But he was talking about in his businesses, in his factories, he knows how to do everything, and the importance of being, talking to, say, somebody who's on the front line of the conveyor of whatever they're building, to be able to go and speak at the same energetic level, knowing what to do and having done it, right? Maybe we all have to get to that point of, as the Bible says, physician, heal thyself. Our own alignment, and kind of like what you were talking about, you're going to call this year the end of the guru.
Yeah. I think if you're doing the healing thing right, it's seamless, and people aren't making you the healer. They're being empowered by their own ability.
Yeah.
And, I think that the guru kind of portrays that in a bit, but doesn't hand them the real tool of intent and how powerful it really is.
Yeah. I think, too, that another way to kind of say it in the mix between, let's say, 3D nomenclature and 5D would be like, I just lost it. It was a good one too. What were we talking about?
3D versus 5D, so the material world versus the spiritual in a way.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. Where personality, because to me, Randy Mahatma Brown's going to come on Sunday, and he's going to talk about the personality of the soul, something he's written a lot of comments about, and I think it'll be very interesting. But I think the personality from the human perspective and the one he's probably going to talk about is two totally different things. Obviously, as a soul, you have a soul signature, and there's probably certain attributes that go with that. As a human, personality has been distorted like everything else. But I think part of what you're saying, I think the way it might be seen is, it's not going to be about the energy of personality. It's going to be about the energy of character. Ooh. You know what I mean? It's about what energy is the person carrying, and so not the less self-promotion, more fluid, physical, non-physical, word of mouth, kind of thing. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could look at it, but very organic, and I really feel like the abundance is tied to that. And I've kind of witnessed something in the last 3 days where I've actually seen that. I've experienced it with myself, but I've seen a really good example. I can't really share it because I haven't asked, but it's the abundance is tied into all this. It really is. I think that's part of the reason for all the different suppression. And we often think about, hey, they're trying to keep us from looking at ourselves and the power that we actually have, and we think, okay, power to teleport, power to bilocate, remote view, but it could also be the power of abundance, immediate abundance based on building our own containers, sharing that, and the pulsation that comes from that. I'm just borrowing your terminology, but yeah.
If you move beyond the charge, they want you to be in the charge.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's like a fishing line. Like fishing lines are being thrown at us, and we're all fish swimming in here, and you bite one, and we bit enough of them.
Right.
We don't have to bite it anymore.
Right. And, I think that we may not understand the mechanics of how we bite it.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest ones is protecting ourselves.
Yeah.
And having to defend the selves instead of having nothing for it to attach to. And that's really sharing the self. And they're not interested in sharing the self. They're interested in charging it. And so is that, petty tyrant inside of us. It's interested in doing the same thing. Because that's how it feeds. So they use it against us. They use our own inner process against us, and I think we're starting to completely wake up to it, of where we become unmanipulatable.
You know, the more you think about it, and you're right, because, okay, the more you think about it, the more I think about it, the more I come back to this point of, you know what? Every single person on the face of the earth, no matter if they're in the Illuminati or they're a monarchy or they're a president or a pope or a prime minister or whatever, they're all in the same game. They have just as much frequency or infrequency of visitation, or there's just as many, thinkers in some of those groups, I would imagine. I mean, especially if you have this whole, and I believe this, we all decide. We decide, we take a vote every day, so to speak. How do you want this to go? And then you have the pattern of the ego. Has it infiltrated our... Are we blind to our true reality, even at a higher level?
When we get concerned about things, we misalign our magnetics, and then we abandon the self. And that's the best way I can describe it, is that when we care about things, we embody the self and align the heart's harmonics.
Yeah.
And everything wants us to believe that being concerned means we care, instead of concern being us wanting to control the outcome.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. Yeah, I think that's the biggest surrender. People use that word. I always cringe with it, but I think that's the big one. Letting go of how things unfold and allow it to happen how the universe knows best, so to speak.
Yeah, it's we live in a vibrational reality, but use this electrical thing with our brain to try to think that we project it and produce it. And it gives us a false sense of self, instead of understanding that everything comes to us by the nature of the vibration. And if you can get your outer world to match up with your inner world, then you really got something.
Yeah. So in essence, what you're saying is, let me just, because that was a good one. Because of let's just say the simulation, we have the perspective that we actually create what's occurring, when in actuality it's the same laws of the universe that apply everywhere, even this fishbowl of a realm. You are what you eat. I mean, you are all of the space that you hold, and all the characters and the environments, and like that. So in essence, we're not creating it, we're recognizing it. And as we recognize ourselves, because we become fully present with ourselves, which is an ascending track. In other words, it commands that you not stagnate, you must keep moving. But as we do that, then you might say it in human terms, we're consciously creating what we want, because we know who we are and what we want, right? I mean,
yeah, the universe has a great terminology for it. It says that what we receive equals what we share.
Say that again. What we receive
equals what we share.
That's right.
And notice it didn't say what we do or think.
What we receive is equal to what we share. And see, I look at it, I hadn't thought about it that way, but I guess it's the same thing. The inverse, what we share is equal to what we receive. What that means to me is like when we do music, and we hit those 14 minutes out of a 50, and everything just kind of goes like, to me, that's sharing. To me, that's like me going, this is me, or this is, like transparent share. There's a I don't know, a connotation or a flavor of transparency and true sharing. Like, what's there to hide here? This is it. You know, sharing, we don't, isn't always like giving somebody a bag of money or a plate of food.
Right.
The sharing is sharing the unique part of the universal that you are.
I think a good way to explain it, like in relationships, we can only attract the level of nurturing that we're willing to nurture ourselves.
Mm.
And a lot of times we expect that we should be nurtured, and of course that creates self-importance instead of letting ourselves nurture the selves and have that nurturing to share. Music, like you said, is like that because we're co-creating the moment. We are allowing ourselves, like you said, in that 14 minutes, to come into that presence with the self where
Mm-hmm.
we are not making or projecting anything to happen. We are only experiencing the vibration that we can receive and share in the moment.
Yeah, and I think another key element, well, my favorite word is humility.
Mm,
You can't fake humility. It's a personal thing, and you know you can't bullshit yourself. I mean, but I think, I do believe that we're creating new code. It's not like a big bang happened and everything is everything. I get that. Oneness is oneness, but look, like behind you, it's moving. It's moving. It's not stagnant. And I
yeah,
think,
we're actually
and
co-creating code.
yeah, and I think that there's certain human attribute or human realities of the transition that are unique to the human experience. And for me, the humility factor is huge, and a big part of it is at the end of the day, once a day, twice a day, whatever. It's at I don't know nothing, and I
Right.
and I kind of like get not PTSD, but like feel like, you know, when you're talking about singing into the microphone and can you feel it coming back against you,
Right.
like when people are like, well, this is what's going on, this is what it is, period, end of story. I'm like, oh, okay. And even if it was Jesus or Buddha or Mary Magdalene or Kuan Yin, and even when I've had dimensional experiences, it would be a stagnation to take it at face value. It would
Right.
be, it's in our blood to be curious and to ask questions. That's how new growth occurs.
When it's shareable, it's also in alignment with the nature of the universe and the natural organization, and there is no end or beginning of it.
Hmm.
And they have this term in science called recursive, and it means to add and subtract at the same time. And so if energy comes in, then we have energy to share, and now we are utilizing that energy. Like, I think making it more simple for everybody, like my ability to know my own worth is my ability to attract that worth in this reality. My ability to receive my own value is my ability to share and also attract and understand what value is in this reality.
Which is my value. It starts with my value of self.
Right. And if you can't receive that, why would we expect for it to show up?
Well,
You know?
I like what you said when you use the analogy of, because it is an analogy in the greater context, like in what you're talking about, which is in a relationship of any kind.
Right.
How do you expect to be nurtured greater than you can nurture yourself? Because that's like enablement. It's like enabling. And we've all done this as empaths, we've overgiven, right? Until we learned our lessons. And we're no longer in Neptune or Uranus or Pluto. We're now in the age of Aquarius. Or whatever.
Yeah, it's a trip how when you understand how it works vibrationally, you put less emphasis on the story. And since how you want to feel is literally the outcome that you want, when you cut the story out and you dissolve the story, your heart's voice becomes super available.
Yeah.
And what you know, not what you believe, not what you think should be, but what you know inside of you now becomes tangible.
Man, I've been having a lot of, God, I don't know how to put it. These, obviously the synchronicities with the numbers have just been increasing the past 10 years, and it's just gotten stupid. But other things, I guess you would call it instant manifestation. You know, like moments like when Amethyst walked in and we just decided to shake hands and say, let's try to make music. Or so many other things, especially around Soulogy Fest stuff.
Oh yeah,
But
we really haven't talked publicly since that whole experience, have we?
oh, we haven't. You
I
and
don't
I
think
haven't
so.
publicly.
Well, usually we're playing music, so we're on a different kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that what was really cool about Soulogy Fest is the individuality that got shared and all the people that showed up and to share their container. And many of those people, I am still ready and ready to collaborate. And the level of collaboration was just excellent.
yeah.
It really was.
Thanks to you, Serena, and Hung, and I'm sure other
Well,
people.
right, right,
Nothing. There's nothing like having your back against the wall.
right. We're either going to do it or not, right?
Or as I was told, face the wall, bend over.
Well,
Pull your
right, and
chin.
you were wearing the same shirt, but I said to you when we came on, I'm like, you're wearing a gel
Physical
shirt.
search of all orifices. Um, no, but there's just been a lot of like, I don't know. I would say weaving, but it's more like, kind of like things are just not collapsing either. More like a telescope, how it expands, and you know what I mean, like it goes like that, like things just unfolding. If the personal vibration is in a certain range, let's say, I don't think the 0 point is a thin line. I think it's got a little bit of wiggle, and then you can even wiggle back in, and you know what I mean. But there just seems to be more third energy evidence that's becoming familiar and kind of easier to navigate. It feels good amongst all the stuff, amongst all the fluctuations internally and externally.
Yeah, I think learning how to master your feelings and go through them is definitely this pathway to, like people talk about the fifth dimensional awareness. They sometimes they talk about it as a physical place we're going to end up in instead of a place that is awareness.
Yeah, that would then create the physicality to match it.
Absolutely. And, vibrationally, being able to literally create a circle within yourself and the awareness of those opposing forces allows us to awaken into that upper dimensional consciousness, because the charge doesn't go through the barrier. It doesn't go into the upper dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
The duality doesn't exist. And if it is not, what's the word I want to say? If the gravity isn't changed, then the density in your field cannot take you into that.
It's like eye of the needle.
It definitely
Like
to get to the heart of Christos.
Yeah. I like it. What is that? There's that one meme. It wasn't Santa Claus. It's actually a meme, and it's talking about going through the eye of the needle. And I think there's like a big rainbow kind of circular thing with a hole in it. And the guy's trying to go through, and his ass is real big. He can't get through. It always reminds me of Santa Claus trying to go down a chimney.
Right.
But yeah. I think maybe. I mean, there's we could say there's a cycle of cycles ending, but really I think this is just a continuous motion. Not that it matters, but the signs are there in terms of more. You could say more photonic light, more light, expanded consciousness. I've had enough of this shit. I got no more fucks to give. Whatever you want to put it. That energy in of itself. I feel like a couple of the bursts we've had and that were particularly in 2022, especially toward the end, after the hellacious summer and the couple of months that followed. I feel like that there. This is just my personal opinion. That there was a lot of, I'm tired of this shit. This is changing, like, and that power was then pulsed out into the collective experience.
Yeah, I love how you described it as good character or character. I think that really sums it up. In the African traditions, we call it iwa prele, that one of the most elevated thing in this life is to develop good character.
Iwa prele.
Mm.
Iwa prele.
Yeah, I mean, and you also hit on the whole that shamanism itself is the path of humility.
I heard something a couple of days ago, and I don't even know where I heard it or watched it. And they were talking about this time right now, and they were talking about, obviously some choose from a soul level to continue experiencing in the, let's say, the 3D vibration or the codependent, we know the game. And then some are walking in 5D almost at the point where they're out of their body, right? And then some, and this is the words that were used, some are on the shamanic path, or they're holding a shamanic position, almost like a bridge, where they can walk in both. And it was more of like, this is where we're headed. And I'm not saying it's gospel truth. I'm just saying it was interesting to contemplate that.
Yeah, creating no boundaries can be problematic, and creating all the boundaries also can be problematic. And humility is the path in between both of those choices.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows us to live from what the Toltecs call the point of no pity. I like to call it the point of compassion also.
The point of no pity.
Mm-hmm. This is where the shaman lives.
Yeah, the point of... Yeah, I remember like 10, 11 years ago. That was but now that you tie it in, like, there was a point. I was like, there is no pity. Like, it is what it is, whatever's happening. But at the same time, now that you say this and present it to me, I think it was the beginning. And when I reached the point of no pity for myself, that was the point I began to have compassion for myself. And I didn't even know it.
Right.
I didn't even really consciously begin to understand that until this past year.
Yeah, you literally have to face your pain to step into that place of no pity.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's why pain and pleasure are opposites.
But they're really the same. Just like no pity and compassion. I mean, not at the Earth's definitional level, but...
Right. Yeah, compassion, I always say, has 6 parts. And we literally have to align all 6 parts to live in that place of no pity. And the Toltecs make it very simple. Is that learning to accept the self, understand or forgive the self, to trust the self, to embody the care of self, to feel connected in the self and the pleasure of self, describes our light body and what it is to truly live compassionately.
Okay, repeat those 6 things again.
Well, let me introduce them as our teachers in life, okay? Because I gave you the good qualities, but let me show you how we get there. First, we face rejection and resistance to understand acceptance and appreciation of self.
Mm-hmm.
And without those, we really don't get it. Judgment is our next duality to understand ourselves and forgive. And without judgment, how do we know what understanding or forgiveness is? Trying to control the outcome, be concerned about everything, leads to understanding what it is to trust ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Facing our fear, the fear of not having security, the fear of not having a deep connection, the fear of what we cannot control, leads to understanding the love that we are. And each one of those fears teaches us something about that love. Facing the sorrow leads to understanding joy and connection. Sorrow, abandonment,
Yeah.
disconnection,
Yeah.
and then finally pain and pleasure. So pain is our teacher, and victimhood, entitlement, all of that is the most painful thing. And going through that pain to truly have humility
Yeah. That's when you find out you're a dumbass.
on lots of levels, right?
Oh, I was a dumbass. I was in victim consciousness. I was in entitlement mode. I was narcissistic. I mean, I've been there, man. And you
Yeah,
have those moments. You're like, oh my god. But they, as much as they hurt, and as much as that I'm a dumbass um, hits you, the humility hits you equally. It's there. You can't just fake that. You can't say that.
right. Yeah, you really can't fake the humility. That's what the shamans always taught me. They said, humility is this path, and it will unfold throughout your whole life and your whole destiny, and it will be your constant teacher.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the pain in the light body. Yay!
Man, so we didn't do too bad for not having music. We didn't do
Sure.
too bad.
Mhm.
It wasn't so bad.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure, man.
Yeah, man. Well, we should do this more often. I think it's kind of chill. And the thing is like with Soulogy, it's always changed. It's always morphed or whatever, still containing and just trying new things and just having a conversation or whatever the case is. I mean, just try. And I think that's a big deal too. Is to try something and it doesn't work, because I've done it many times. Is in itself like like a character builder kind of thing.
For real, for real, for real. I mean, I love the whole thing about having to, know the logistics of something to truly understand it.
Yeah,
You know, yeah,
having to build it from the ground up. Yeah, I think the more I hear the term, like from you and Morgan, the build a container, the more I realize that means every single piece of it. Like, you can't delegate anything. And I don't mean, I'm
right.
not saying necessarily literally, I'm just saying you've got to know every piece of it, every piece of yourself, really.
Absolutely. And it's beautiful how that unfolds in life, through relationships, through family, through life, through problems.
Through free rides to Houston from Arkansas.
Right, right.
Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy.
Bargain for some of those things.
Well, we'll we'll have to make some time for some music this
Cool.
week. Whenever
Cool,
you're ready.
cool.
Whenever you're ready, let me know.
Okay. All
All
right,
right, brother.
All right,
man.
Todd.
Take care. See you later.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having me.
everybody. Yeah, man.